Have you ever noticed how some things that are backed by just mountains of scientific evidence, somehow still get talked about like they're a 50-50 debate? Well, there's a reason for that. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a really powerful strategy that explains it all. A deliberate, well-funded way to actually manufacture ignorance. And it all starts with this, a stunningly honest memo from inside the tobacco industry, way back in 1969. It says, "Doubt is our product." I mean, just think about that. That wasn't some slip-up. It was their entire business model. The point was never to win the scientific argument. The point was to create just enough doubt to stall, to confuse, and to keep any real regulation from happening.
And you know what? It worked. Like, unbelievably well. For 50 years, half a century, the tobacco industry managed to fight off this avalanche of proof that links smoking to cancer. So the big question is how? How in the world did they pull that off? How do you sell doubt about something that's so obviously true?
To really get it, you have to go back to the original case study. This was the blueprint, the model that's been copied over and over again. Let's break down exactly how Big Tobacco managed to put doubt up for sale.
Okay, so their goal was pretty straightforward. Just counter what they called the body of fact. But their method, well, it was kind of genius in a really dark way. See, instead of fighting science head-on, they used science. They funded their own studies, pushed their own experts into the spotlight, and basically manufactured the appearance of a huge scientific debate. And the result of all this? Decades of delay and a human cost that is just staggering.
This strategy, this whole idea of deliberately creating confusion, is so important that it actually has its own name now. We're not talking about just random misinformation here. This is a whole field of study.
And that name is Agnotology. A historian named Robert Proctor came up with it. It's the study of how ignorance is actively and purposefully created for some kind of political or commercial gain. And the key thing to get here is that we're not talking about just not knowing something.
Think about it like this, right? Native ignorance is just a gap in your knowledge. It's an empty space waiting to be filled with facts. But engineered ignorance, agnotology, is totally different. That's an active process. It's about taking that empty space and cramming it so full of noise and confusion and contradictions that you just give up trying to figure out what's true.
So once the tobacco industry cracked this code, it didn't stay their secret for long. It became a formula, a repeatable playbook that basically anyone could use to protect their product or their ideology from, inconvenient facts.
And this playbook has some very specific moves. First, you fund distraction. Pay for research on literally anything else that might be the cause. Second, you go to the media and promote controversy, making it look like scientists are all arguing. Third, you attack the real science. You call it junk science and demand absolute 100% proof, which is almost impossible. And finally, you create your own front groups, things that sound like independent scientific councils but are really just there to back you up.
And here's the thing. Once you learn to spot this playbook, you start seeing it pop up all over the place. It's a pattern of deception that's been used in one public health crisis after another.
I mean, just look at this. The lead industry did it to deny the harm from lead paint. The sugar industry did it to shift the blame for heart disease onto fat. Drug companies used it to downplay how addictive opioids were. And of course, the fossil fuel industry borrowed pages directly from the tobacco playbook to manufacture doubt about climate change. The tactics are identical. It's just the product that changes.
Now, this isn't just some old story from history, and it's not something that only happens in big Western countries. The Agnotology playbook has gone global, and it has absolutely devastating consequences in places that might have weaker regulations.
Let's take a look at a tragic and very current example: the misuse of pesticides in Nepal. It's a perfect modern case of how this engineered ignorance can create a massive public health crisis.
The scale of what's happening there is just mind-boggling. In less than 10 years, pesticide imports in Nepal exploded. They went from around 400,000 kilograms to 3.5 million. That's almost a 9-fold increase. So with this flood of dangerous chemicals, you'd think there was a huge surge in safety knowledge, right?
Not even close. Over 60% of the farmers who are using these powerful chemicals have absolutely no formal training on how to handle them safely. Now, this isn't just an accident. This is a knowledge gap that's been created by a system that pushes sales way ahead of safety, a system that's made worse by weak border controls and public services that just aren't connected.
And the consequences are just heartbreakingly predictable. You've got widespread use of banned, dangerous chemicals, you've got rising suicide rates from pesticide poisoning, and you have growing links to higher cancer rates among farmers.
This is the direct result of an environment where the real dangers are downplayed and safety knowledge just isn't there. So, when you see all this, the most important question is pretty obvious. What can we do about it? I mean, how do you fight back against the deliberate creation of ignorance?
Well, the answer isn't that you have to become an expert on every topic out there. That's impossible, right? The real antidote, the real power, comes from learning to recognize the playbook itself. When you see those tactics, the fake controversy, the attacks on the consensus, the funding of distractions, you can spot when doubt is being manufactured on purpose.
And remember this, real science is always going to have some uncertainty. That's actually how it moves forward. But agnotology twists that. It creates this thick fog of fake ambiguity around topics where scientists are actually pretty certain. And learning to tell the difference between the real thing and the fake fog, that's the critical skill we all need today.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. This playbook is incredibly powerful, it's easily repeatable, and you better believe it's still being used every single day on all kinds of issues. So now that you know what it looks like, the real question is, where are you going to see it next?